When dealing with embroidery file types, there is a ton of extensions and different information that you're looking at. And really, there's only two kinds of embroidery information in those files. And typically that's either a wireframe, which has a lot of information, or expanded, which is typically just the plotted out needle penetrations. So let's take a look at the different file types that are available to you and what kind of information those file types can hold. So the first thing that I want to look at is what is wireframe information. And so when we're dealing with an OFM, typically we're dealing with wireframe information. And what that is, if I expand out in the project view, I have my color block, and then below that I have individual wireframe elements, and typically that's going to show you what type of tool was used to create it. So in this case it's a walk normal stitch with a walk normal input method. Here was a complex fill with a fill stitch inside of it, and if you look, you can see the properties of those wireframe elements. So I have the shape. You can see all of my input points around here. That's my shape. If I edit that shape, it'll fill in, and it will fill in with the properties that are listed up above. So I have a density of 4.0 and a stitch angle of 247 degrees and a stitch type of fill. So all of that is wireframe information and properties associated with that. And again, if I come over here and I zoom in on this pair and I drag this wireframe point, it will fill in those stitches for me. So that's the wireframe information. Wireframe information is typically, I'm a shape with all of this information in me, and if you scale it or change the shape, it's going to fill in that shape with that information. Expanded is typically just plotted out stitches. So I'm going to save a copy of this file. So File, Save As, and I'm going to save a copy of one day, but I'm going to save it as an EXP, which is going to save as expanded. So let's open up that file that we just saved. It's expanded. I'm going to open that up, and here you'll see, if I go into 3D, that the stitches are pretty much the same, or almost identically the same, as that OFM, as that wireframe data. Big differences. I don't have any color information associated with it. As I open it up, it comes in all these kind of weird colors. It doesn't know that the pairs originally were light green or that the leaves were medium green. The fact that the leaves are green and the bird is yellow is just completely a coincidence, in that it happens to be the second and third thing to sew. If I expand this out, it doesn't have that walk and the complex fill. All it has is expanded data, so it doesn't know what any of those shapes are. So wireframe has the shapes and the information. Expanded has only the plotted out stitches. An OFM can also contain color information. It can contain those notes that you can write to keep track of what my customer is doing, what am I sewing this on, what kind of backing am I using, all those kinds of things. Now an OFM can also contain expanded. So if I were to go into the one that I saved as expanded, and I were to, let's say, copy this and paste it into an OFM, I'm going to paste it right on top. I'm going to move this over just to the side, just so that we can see the differences, and then I'm going to go ahead and center that up. Now, side by side, these are going to look exactly the same, and if I colorize them the same, they'll look identical. So now these look exactly the same, and an OFM can contain all of this information. So just because you have an OFM doesn't necessarily mean you have wireframe information. I have expanded data inside of an OFM. But if you have expanded and you want to keep that color information, you can colorize your design, add notes to it, and save it as an OFM to keep all of that information with you. So OFMs, they're going to be able to contain wireframe data. They will be able to contain color information. They'll be able to contain notes, all that kind of stuff. A C&D, so let's take a look at the different file types that you can save as. So File, Save As. And then if I look in this list, I have a lot of different file types. This first one, I apparently can't do both of those at the same time. So this first one is an OFM, and that's the one that contains all that good information. The Melco condensed file, that's a much older version of a wireframe file. Some of the ones that you open up from past softwares will contain wireframe information such as a complex fill, but they're going to be very, very simple fills. If you save out as a C&D now, it will save everything as a manual stitch because the software has learned so many new tricks to speak to the old software or the old machines. That's the best way it can translate that. So now if you save out as a condensed file, pretty much you're getting almost the equivalent of expanded. Everything between EXP all the way down to a DSZ, those are all going to be expanded data. Those are all stitch files for different machine types. Machines typically don't read wireframe files. That's something that's a little bit different about how we operate when we're able to load an OFM. And then below that, you've got all of from BMP to SVGZ. Those are all graphics files. So if you wanted to save out as a preview for something, you could save out just a graphic file for that. So you've got a ton of different file types, but also different information within those file types. Again, you've got your stitch files, you've got your OFM, which can contain wireframe data, it can contain color information and notes, and most likely will contain that wireframe data for you. So hopefully that clarifies things a bit, and you know exactly what you're getting when you get an embroidery file, and you'll know what you're doing when you save out an embroidery file.